Good evening, everyone. I'm here to tell you about a workshop that I'll be running with two other people. And this is a new reality workshop. And a question I'd like to ask you guys, you folks out there, is have you ever wanted to create 3D or virtual reality experiences? Yeah. Some enthusiasm there. Damn right you have. And if not, then hopefully I can persuade you that this is kind of a fun and entertaining thing to do. I think as human beings, we've been trying to create different realities for really quite a long time. And some of you might have heard me talk about this before, but we go back to, say, the 1800s or so, and there was this approach to go and create these very large paintings. These were panoramic paintings, and these were so large that the idea was that they would just encompass your entire vision, and you would feel very much as if you were a part of this reality. And if you look, even apart from paintings, there's all sorts of other ways where we go and create different realities that we like to exist in, whether it's through music, whether it's through films, or whether it's through books. Step a little bit forward. One of my favourite machines of all time, which is the Sensorama, and has this lovely sort of retro 60s feel to it. And it was very much ahead of its time, containing speakers, stereoscopic 3D display, a vibrating chair, fans, and indeed a smell generator. And this came with a number of different films, including I'm a Coca-Cola bottle, which we can only imagine what might have been involved there. However, present day, we've maybe got some more accessible devices. So Google Cardboard on the left, $10 or so on eBay. I'd highly recommend you purchase one of these things. I think if you haven't played with one of these things, you'll be quite surprised some of the quality you can get from this. So we've got Google Daydream there, right up to the full headsets, HTC Vive, and so on. So for the amateur developer of these areas, I think there's probably four main ways to go and create 3D or sort of virtual reality experiences. Web, Unity framework, the Cardboard SDK, and then of course there's various game engines which are a little bit more involved to go and work with some of these things. So in the workshop, I'm going to be talking about web, and this is the area we're going to be exploring. But some of you might say, why on earth should we do this? Web technologies, they're great, but why would you want to go and use some of these things to create 3D and virtual reality experiences? And that's a good question. And there are a number of different reasons for this. So probably one of the main ones is that there's no plugin required for these experiences. It will run on multiple devices and platforms. But for me, one of the really big reasons is that many of us in the room are probably involved in web development to some extent, and this allows you to make use of existing skills that you have already. I'd love to spend a load of time playing and learning with Unity, but I just simply don't have the time to really get into this. But I am very familiar with JavaScript, HTML, and so on, so it's immediately accessible. It's got open distribution. There's nothing to stop you contributing back to the specifications if you'd like to. And the applications are also fairly small, and you can make use of HTTP infrastructure, caching, and so on. It also works fairly well on some lower spec devices. Some of the headsets can get relatively expensive, and the machines needed to run some of these things. I also think it could potentially work quite well as a sort of prototyping method. Maybe you're looking at developing your experience using native options and you just want to have a quick play first. Like anything, there's some reasons as well not to work with this. It is less performant than native options. And there is somewhat limited control integration compared to other options. So you can interface with some of the things. So Vive, for example, has these paddles, which you've probably seen. We have the Gamepad API. So there is control integration as well. It is experimental tech, so there are a few rough edges around it as well. So in order to put these things together, we need a number of ingredients. And I think the 5 main ingredients for this are these. We're going to need a bit of JavaScript. It's probably not going to surprise you. We're going to need some way of actually scripting and creating these experiences. We're going to use WebGL in order to actually go and display the content. We're going to... Free.js is not strictly necessary, but the truth is that WebGL is a bit of a pig to work with, and you're very brave indeed if you want to create complex experiences directly with this. And then we're going to need a way of actually getting some feedback about where the headset is positioned, what the user's doing and moving about. And for that, we're going to go and use WebVR, which allows us to access the device's capabilities and get these updates and information. Now, the final one I put in a dotted box, device orientation events, because these experiences, they're not accessible just on headsets. We can use mobile devices and tablets as well. And device orientation events enable us to understand if someone's rotating the phone, moving stuff around, and then we can use that to update the screen accordingly. So let's talk about the workshop now. What are we going to cover in it? Well, we're going to have a brief introduction, first of all, to developing web-based experiences, review some of the options, and a couple of things that might bite you in doing this. In the workshop, we're going to predominantly concentrate on a framework called A-Frame. I think this is probably the most easy and accessible way into this. A-Frame is actually built on Free.js behind the scenes, so by using A-Frame, you very much have access to full functionality of WebGL via Free.js. The second half of the workshop, for those that want to, will be looking at augmented reality using something called AR.js. And for those that aren't so interested in that, we'll be continuing with A-Frame. We're also going to have a couple of devices. I'll bring my Vive device along, and one of the other workshop coordinators has one of the new Windows mixed reality devices. These are quite interesting in that they're very much cheaper than some of the options like the Rift and Vive, and they don't require kind of sensor devices to understand the user's position. So it'll be quite a sort of fun place in order you can try out your experiences on a real device afterwards. Let's talk about A-Frame quickly. So A-Frame was developed by Mozilla. It's built on Free.js, and basically you construct your scene using elements. If you can write a bit of HTML, A-Frame is very similar in nature in how you put these things together. And the really great thing is the same code will work on everything from a mobile phone, a tablet device, right up to a full headset, and you won't have to do anything different. A-Frame's going to take care of all that complexity for you. So what does the code look like? Well, here's a sort of hello world example here. We have a A-frame scene, which is kind of a container or wrapper element. And within this, we've added a cube there. And we set a couple of attributes such as width, height, depth. We've given it a color and a position on the screen. And with that simple bit of code, we'll get this. And we can go and use the mouse, go and drag around the screen here. We can project it on a headset. If I move around, it will go and update accordingly. So you can see, with a really trivial bit of code, we can start to create some interesting experiences. It also contains a great extensibility model in order to add functionality. This particular bit of code here turns the whatever element is applied to red when the user clicks or interacts with it. Here's a couple of examples of some of the stuff that other people have done with it. So this is from the A-Frame website. You can see we've got some kind of game, people are interacting with environment, and some kind of dance thing going on there. This is an example I created. It's got procedurally generated terrain in the background. We've got a craft moving about. I took the sound off it, but it's got howling wind and sort of spacecraft sounds as you're moving it around. I'm certainly no 3D games developer, but you can create some relatively nice looking experiences, with pretty quickly in this framework. Another example I want to show you, this is from Pat. This is another guy who will be working the workshop. He's created kind of a solar system experience, so planets will orbit and so on. And so I think there's some quite nice things that you can do with this. Here's I think it's going to make me finish the video. There we go. Here we have AR.js. So you can sort of apply these markers, so you can print out sort of little symbols, and it will then allow you to sort of superimpose 3D objects on top of it. And we'll be playing around with some of this stuff. So who's going to be taking this workshop? Well, this idiot here is going to be talking about some of this. I've worked with Free.js before. I've produced a Pluralsight course on this, and also in developing VR experiences using web technologies. And also organised the DDD Melbourne event with some other people. Some of you guys may have been to. We have PatCat, and Pat runs a site called Dev Diner, which is all about emerging tech, and he runs a newsletter around this, and he's very keen in this area as well. And he's also currently developing an online course around developing these experiences. And finally, we have Lars Klint. He loves HoloLens and sort of augmented and mixed reality. And he's also written a number of different courses and as part of the DDD Melbourne Organisation Committee. What will you need to be part of this workshop? You're going to need a laptop or a device, or borrow someone else's, or partner with someone, and a tiny bit of HTML and JavaScript knowledge. Cross-looking cat is probably optional. So that's it. I hope we encourage you to come and have a play with this stuff. It's really easy to use. It's good fun. And it's maybe a bit different to some of the sort of web development everyday type of things that we're doing. Thank you very much.